The alien girl walked slowly through the dusty streets of her village. Her feet were bare, and her steps were weak. The sun above was burning, but she felt colder than the stones under her feet. Her stomach made a low sound, the sound of hunger, that had been with her for many days. She looked around, but no one cared for her. The people of her village laughed when they saw her face. They whispered cruel words, calling her useless, unwanted dirt. Whenever she tried to ask for food, they threw rotten scraps at her feet, not because they wanted to feed her, but because they enjoyed watching her crawl. Children pointed at her, laughing louder than the adults. They copied her weak walk, pretending to fall and beg. Mothers told their children, "Do not be like her, she is nothing." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. If she cried, they would laugh more. Her hair was messy, covered in dust. Her clothes were thin and torn, almost hanging from her body. Her bones showed clearly, each rib moving when she tried to breathe. She wanted to run away, but she had nowhere to go. Her world was only hunger, cruelty, and laughter. One day, she stood near the marketplace. She thought maybe someone would give her bread, but instead, they mocked her. A group of men shouted, "Look, she is still alive. We thought she would die last week." Another man laughed. "Maybe she eats dirt. Maybe that is why she survives." Everyone laughed, the sound echoing through the air like knives cutting into her heart. The girl lowered her head and whispered to herself, "I just want to live." No one listened. No one cared. She walked to a corner and sat on the ground, her arms wrapped around her knees. She closed her eyes, wishing the hunger would stop. She wished she could sleep and never wake up again. But far away, someone was watching. A human, tall and quiet, stood in the crowd. He did not laugh. He did not join the others. His eyes followed the girl. Seeing the way she shook with weakness, he saw how the people mocked her, treating her worse than an animal. His jaw tightened and his hands curled into fists. But he said nothing, not yet. The girl tried to walk again. She went near a food stall, where the smell of roasted meat filled the air. Her mouth watered, her eyes locked on the food. She whispered, "Please, just a little." But the seller pushed her away, shouting, "Get out, you filthy thing." The crowd laughed again. One boy picked up a stone and threw it at her. It hit her shoulder, and she fell to the ground. The laughter grew louder. The girl's hands trembled as she pushed herself up again. She wanted to scream, but her voice was too weak. Her body swayed, her legs shaking like they could break. She dragged herself to the edge of the market and sat again. Her breath was heavy, each inhale sharp and painful. Her stomach felt empty, like a hole that would never be filled. The people walked past, some still laughing, others didn't even see her at all. To them, she was nothing, less than dust. The human kept watching. His eyes were calm, but filled with something different, anger and sadness, he thought. How can they be so cruel? She is only a child. She is only hungry. The girl lifted her head slightly and saw him for a moment. Their eyes met, and for a second she felt strange. This human's eyes were not cruel, not mocking, but she quickly looked down again, afraid. It was only her imagination. As the sun began to set, the village grew louder. The people gathered to drink, to sing, to joke, and again, their favorite joke was the starving girl. They shouted, "She will not last the night. Tomorrow we will find her body in the dirt." The girl hugged her knees tighter, her lips cracked, her throat dry. She whispered again, "I just want to live." But her voice was too small to be heard. The human turned and walked away into the shadows, but in his mind, her weak words repeated again and again. He knew this was not the end. Something inside him had already decided. He could not let her die like this, not while he was here, not while he had the power to change it. The girl lay on the cold ground, her eyes closing. The stars began to shine. Above, the laughter of her people still echoed in her ears. And in that moment, she believed she was truly alone. But she did not know. Someone had already chosen to change her fate. Someone who did not laugh. Someone who did not mock. A human watching from the darkness. Waiting for the right moment. And when that moment came, the story of the girl treated like dirt would change forever. Asterisk, the night was long, and the alien. Girl could not sleep. Her stomach growled again and again. A cruel reminder that she had nothing. She lay on the cold ground, her body shaking with every breath. The laughter of her people still echoed in her mind. Even in her dreams, they mocked her. When morning came, her eyes opened slowly. Heavy with weakness, the world felt blurry. But the pain of hunger was sharp and clear. She pushed herself up with trembling arms. Her legs felt like sticks ready. To break still, she forced herself to stand, because no matter how tired, no matter how hopeless, she had to search for food. Her life was only about surviving one more day. She walked to the trash heaps behind the market. There, she dug with her thin fingers, searching for anything: rotten fruit, hard bread, bones with no meat. Nothing was too low for her. The smell was terrible, but she ignored it. Her hunger was stronger than disgust. She found a small piece of bread, black with mold. Her hands shook as she raised it to her mouth. But before she could eat, a group of boys appeared. "Look, the beggar is stealing from the trash again," one shouted. They ran forward, kicking the food from her hands. The bread fell into the dirt. Broken and useless, the boys laughed, clapping their hands like it was a game. One of them said, "Maybe we should tie her to the post and let the dogs eat her." The others laughed harder. The girl stayed silent, lowering her eyes. She did not fight back. She did not cry. She only whispered inside, "Please, just let me eat." The boys finally left, still laughing. The girl crawled to the ground and picked up the ruined bread. She tried to eat it anyway, but the dirt made her gag. She coughed, tears filling her eyes. Her throat burned with dryness. Her stomach screamed. But there was nothing more she could do. She dropped the bread and curled up. Her body was too weak to move further from the edge of the market. The human was there again. He had watched her. Searching, watched the boys mocking her. His jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. He wanted to step forward, to shout at them. But he stopped himself. He knew it was not yet the right time. Still, his heart burned with anger. He thought, "This is not survival. This is torture." The day moved slowly, and the sun rose high. The girl dragged herself from one stall to another. She begged in a small voice, "Please." Some food, but no one gave her anything. A woman spat near her feet. A man pushed her away with a stick. Some only laughed. Others pretended she did not exist. Her body shook as she walked, each step slower than the last. Her hunger grew heavier. Like a weight pressing her down, she found herself near the water well. Other villagers were filling buckets. The girl waited until they left, then crawled to the side. She scooped water with her hands and drank. The cool taste gave her a moment of relief, but water was not food, and soon her stomach twisted again. The emptiness returned, worse than before. She pressed her thin hands against her belly. It felt like her body was eating itself. In the distance, the human followed, step by step. He kept her in sight. He saw how her body bent forward. He saw her shadow trembling in the dirt. She looked like a candle about to go out. And still, her people laughed. To them, her suffering was entertainment. But to him, it was something else. It was wrong, deeply wrong. As the sun began to set, the girl found a corner near the market fire. She sat close, trying to steal warmth from the flames. She watched others eat bread, meat, and fruit. The smell made her mouth water. Her stomach twisted. Pulling her forward, For a moment, she thought about rushing to the fire, grabbing food, but she knew what would happen. They would beat her, mock her, maybe even kill her, so she stayed where she was, her eyes locked on the food she could never touch. Her mind began to blur. She thought about her mother, though she could not remember her face. She thought about kindness, though she had never felt it. Her body leaned against the wall. Eyes heavy, she whispered again, "I just want to live." The fire crackled, the voices laughed, and she fell into half-sleep. Her hunger was so strong it made her dream. She dreamed of bread, of soup, of someone giving her a hand. But when she opened her eyes, it was only darkness, and the hunger remained. The human still watched. Hidden in the shadows, he saw her fall asleep. Her head against the wall, he shook his head, whispering to himself, "They will let her die if no one stops this." The decision inside him grew stronger. He could not walk away anymore. He had to do something. Soon, the girl breathed slowly, each breath heavy. Her face looked pale, almost ghost-like in the firelight. Her lips moved, whispering words too quiet to hear, but the human knew what they were. The same words she always said, "I just want to live." And as the night grew darker, the girl's hunger did not end, but her story was about to change, because the human was still there, and he would not watch much longer. The morning sun rose again, but for the alien girl. The new day brought nothing new. Her stomach had not known food for many days, and her body was thin like dry sticks. Her skin clung to her bones. Her eyes were hollow. Her lips cracked. Every step she took through the village streets was slow, heavy, and filled with pain. The people were already awake, busy with their shops and markets. They noticed her, as always, and their laughter began again. "She is still alive." One woman shouted. Another man smirked. "She is harder to kill than a rat." The crowd laughed, and the girl lowered her head. She had no strength to argue, no voice to fight back. She tried to walk to the food stalls, hoping someone would pity her. The smell of roasted bread and cooked meat filled her nose. Her stomach twisted violently. Her knees shook. She whispered softly, "Please, just a bite," but her voice was too weak. Lost in the noise of laughter and mocking words, a child threw a rotten fruit at her. It hit her side, and the crowd laughed louder. She stumbled, but kept walking, dragging her feet. Her body swayed. Like a leaf in the wind, she tried to stay standing, tried to look strong. But her body betrayed her. Her vision blurred, her head spun. The noise around her grew distant, like echoes in a tunnel. Her knees bent suddenly, and she collapsed in the middle of the marketplace. The dust rose around her, and she lay on the ground, unable to move. The crowd went wild with laughter. "Look at her. She fell like a dead animal." One man shouted. Another voice answered, "Don't help her. Let her die. That's all she deserves." Some people gathered closer, not to offer help, but to enjoy the scene. Children pointed and clapped their hands, copying the way she had fallen. A group of men tossed small stones near her, laughing at each weak breath she took. The girl tried to raise her hand, tried to push herself up, but her arms trembled, and her face hit the ground again. She whispered, barely audible, "I just want to live." Her voice was drowned in laughter. No one bent down, no one offered water or food. To them, her suffering was nothing but a joke. The girl closed her eyes, the world spinning into darkness. She thought, "This is the end. I will not wake again." And for a moment, she welcomed the silence of death. But in the crowd, one pair of eyes did not laugh. The human was there, standing still, watching her fall. He had seen her stumble, seen her collapse, and his heart clenched with anger and sorrow. The cruelty of the villagers burned in his chest like fire. He thought, how can they enjoy this? She is dying before their eyes. The crowd continued to mock. Step over her, she is trash. Someone shouted, "Maybe we should drag her out of the market." Another added, but the human stepped forward, his boots hitting the dirt with firm, steady steps. The laughter softened as people noticed him. They stared in confusion. Wondering what he was doing, he walked through the circle of villagers until he stood beside the girl. She lay in the dirt, her chest rising weakly, her breath shallow, her eyes opened just a little, seeing a shadow above her for a moment. She thought it was another villager come to mock her, but when her eyes met his, she froze. There was no laughter in his face, no cruelty in his eyes. Instead, she saw something she had never seen before: concern. The human bent down, his large hands moving carefully. He lifted her gently from the ground, her fragile body light in his arms. The crowd gasped and burst into laughter again. "Look at the fool. He is carrying trash." Someone shouted, "He must want to catch her filth." Another mocked. The human ignored them, his eyes locked only on the girl. Her head rested weakly against his chest, her lips moving faintly. She whispered again, "I just want to live." The words struck him like a blade. He held her tighter, whispering softly, "You will." The crowd continued to jeer, but their voices no longer mattered. The girl's weak heartbeat was more important. Her fragile breath was more valuable than all their laughter. The human stood tall, the girl in his arms. The villagers shouted at him, warning him to drop her. They told him she was worthless, dirty, cursed, but he kept walking, each step steady and sure. The crowd's laughter followed him, but so did silence, a heavy silence of disbelief. For no one had ever dared to touch her, let alone carry her. The girl's eyes fluttered as she looked up at his face again. Her mind was too weak to understand. But one thought echoed in her heart. Why is he helping me? Why? Her body went limp as sleep claimed her. But before she closed her eyes completely, she felt something she had never felt before. Warmth, safety, and the faint hope that maybe her life would not end in the dirt. And as the human carried her away from the crowd, the jeers of the villagers grew faint. But the whispers of change had already begun, for in that moment, the story of the girl treated like dirt had taken its first turn. And no one could have guessed what it would mean for both her and the human. The human carried the alien girl through the dusty streets. Her body was so light in his arms, it felt like carrying a shadow. Her head rested weakly against his chest, her breathing shallow and broken. The villagers followed with mocking voices. "Look at him, holding worthless trash." One man shouted, "She is cursed. She will bring him nothing but death." A woman sneered, but the human did not stop. His eyes fixed only on the path ahead. He reached the edge of the village. Far from the noise and laughter, the girl stirred. Her eyes opening slightly, her lips moved, whispering faint words. "Why? Why are you helping me?" The human looked down at her, his voice calm but firm, "Because no one else will," he answered. The girl blinked. Not sure if she heard correctly. No one had ever spoken to her without mockery. Her weak heart could not believe it, yet his tone was steady. It felt like truth. The human entered a small hut he had built outside the village. It was plain but warm. The smell of firewood filled the air. He laid her gently on a small bed, her thin hands clutched the blanket he placed over her. Her body shook as if she expected him to strike her at any moment. Her people had taught her that kindness never lasted. Kindness was only a trap before cruelty. The human walked to a small pot on the fire. He filled a bowl with warm broth and brought it to her. The girl's eyes widened at the smell. Her stomach twisted painfully, begging for food, but still she hesitated, her lips trembling. "Is this real?" she whispered. The human knelt down and lifted the spoon. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "Eat." She took the first sip, and tears filled her eyes. The taste was soft, salty, warm. Her whole body shook as if she had eaten something too. Powerful, she covered her mouth, afraid it would be taken away, but the human only gave her more. Patiently feeding her spoon after spoon, her body responded slowly, her strength returning piece by piece. Yet in her heart, fear still lingered. She whispered, "Why? Why are you giving this to me?" The human looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because you deserve to live," he said simply. The word struck her deeper than any cruelty ever had. No one had ever said she deserved anything. Not food, not life, not dignity. Her eyes filled with tears she could not stop. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering, "I don't understand." The human placed the bowl aside and stood. "You don't have to understand right now," he said. "You only have to eat and live." The girl leaned back on the blanket. Her heart was racing. Her mind filled with confusion. Was this a dream? Would she wake in the dirt again, mocked by laughter? Or was this real, a strange twist of fate, where a human offered her life? Her thin fingers clutched the blanket tighter. She whispered, "You are not like them." The human paused, looking at her with quiet eyes. "No," he said softly. "I am not like them, outside." The whispers of the villagers grew louder. They could not believe what they had seen. Some said the human had lost his mind. Others said he would regret saving the girl, and some, darker in heart, began to whisper that he must be punished for defying them. But inside the small hut, none of that mattered. For the first time in her life, the girl was not treated like dirt. For the first time, she felt warmth, food, and a strange new feeling safety. The human stoked the fire and glanced back at her. Her eyes were half closed now, heavy with sleep. She looked small, fragile, almost vanishing beneath the blanket. But there was something else too. A faint spark in her eyes that had never been there before. The spark of hope as she drifted into sleep. Her lips moved again, soft words, almost lost to the crackle of the fire. "Thank you," she whispered. The human heard it. And for the first time that day, his stern face softened. "You're welcome," he said quietly. Though she was already asleep, that night the villagers gossiped and mocked. They predicted the girl would bring ruin to the human's life, but inside the hut, a different story was beginning. The story of a girl who had been treated like dirt, and the human who dared to see her as more. The world outside still hated her, but she had found a door open to her, an invitation to live, to be more than what they called her, and though she did not yet know it, that invitation would change not only her life, but his as well, forever. The alien girl woke slowly. For the first time in her memory, she did not open her eyes to dust, stones, or mocking voices. Instead, she felt a blanket covering her thin body. She felt warmth from the fire, soft and steady. Her lips parted in surprise because she thought it was another dream. But when she opened her eyes, she saw the human sitting near the fire, silent, watching the flames. Her heart beat fast. Fear and confusion mixing inside her, she pulled the blanket tighter around her chest. She whispered, "Why am I here?" The human turned his head slightly, his voice calm. "Because you needed somewhere safe," he said. The words made her freeze. Safe, she had never heard that word for herself. She looked down, her hands trembling. Her mind told her it was a trap. Kindness always turned to cruelty. She whispered again, "What do you want from me?" The human's eyes met hers, steady and unshaken. "I want nothing," he said. "I only want you to live." Her breath caught, her chest tightening. No one had ever spoken like this to her. Her people only gave words filled with hate. But his words were simple, clear, and impossible for her to believe. Her stomach growled loudly. Breaking the silence, she flushed in shame. Hiding her face, the human stood, picked up the pot, and poured more broth into a bowl. He placed it gently. Beside her, "Eat," he said. "There's enough." The smell filled her nose, and her hands shook as she reached for the spoon. She ate slowly, her body not used to so much food. Each bite felt like fire and life at the same time. Tears slid down her cheeks, falling into the bowl. She whispered, "Between bites, it is warm. It is real." The human said nothing, only watched. When she finished, she leaned back weakly, her eyes heavy, her body warm for the first time in years. She whispered, "If I fall asleep, will you take it away?" The human frowned, shaking his head. "No," he said firmly, "it is yours, all of it." The girl's lips trembled, and she pulled the blanket tighter, her body curled into itself. For the first time, not from cold, but from fear of losing. The warmth she had just found, outside the night, was alive with whispers. Villagers stood in groups, gossiping about the human. "He has gone mad." One man spat. "She is cursed." "And now he is cursed with her," another said, but none of them dared to step into his hut. They only whispered, like snakes. Waiting for something to happen, inside, the girl's eyes began to close again. She watched the firelight dance across the human's face. "He looked strong, calm, unafraid," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. "Why do you not laugh at me?" The human's answer came without pause, "Because there is nothing to laugh at." Her breath caught again. She had expected another cruel word, another sting, but instead, she received something else entirely. Respect. The girl drifted into sleep again. Her dreams were not filled with stones, hunger, or laughter this time. They were filled with warmth, fire, and the sound of steady footsteps that carried her away from the dirt. When morning came, she woke slowly. Her body was still weak, but something had changed. Her chest felt lighter, her heart not so heavy. She sat up carefully, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. The human was outside, chopping wood with a heavy axe. Each strike echoed strong and clear. The sound made her feel strange safe, like the world was guarded. She touched the blanket and whispered to herself, "This is not a dream." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, something she had not done in years. But then, fear returned. She thought, what if he grows tired of me? What if he throws me out? The thought burned her chest. She wrapped the blanket tightly around her again, whispering, "I will stay quiet. I will work. I will do anything. Just don't send me back." The human returned with wood in his arms. He glanced at her, noticing the fear in her eyes. He placed the wood near the fire and sat down. "You do not have to be afraid," he said gently. "You are not going back to them." Her throat tightened and her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she asked again. The human leaned forward, his voice quiet. "Because no one deserves to be treated the way they treated you." Her tears fell freely now. She covered her face with her hands, her voice breaking. "I thought I was dirt. I thought I was nothing." The human shook his head. "You are not dirt," he said firmly. "You are alive, and that is enough." The words stayed with her, echoing in her chest long after silence filled the hut again for the first time. The alien girl felt something she never thought possible. She felt like she belonged. The warmth was not only from the fire or the blanket. It was from the human, from his words, from the way he looked at her like she was not worthless. And though the world outside was filled with hate, inside the small hut, the girl discovered something new. The warmth of being seen. The warmth of being alive. Days passed slowly inside the small hut. For the alien girl, each day felt like a miracle. She was still weak, but her body was no longer starving. Her cheeks gained a faint color. Her hands no longer shook as much. She could walk across the room without falling. Every small change felt impossible. Yet, it was happening. The human watched her carefully, never pushing her. He gave her food, water, and a blanket at night. he did not ask for thanks. He did not demand anything, but the girl noticed something different in herself. She was beginning to smile. Not much, but enough to feel the change. One morning, she stood outside the hut. The air was cool, the sun soft on her face. For years, she had only known dust and cruelty. But now she felt something else: peace. The human was cutting wood nearby, his axe striking strong and steady. She watched him, amazed at how he worked without complaint. Her lips moved quietly. Why would he waste his strength on me? Later that day, she tried to help him. Her body was still weak. But she gathered small sticks for the fire. When she brought them inside, the human looked at her. His eyes softened, and for the first time, he smiled faintly. "You don't need to," he said. But she shook her head, whispering, "I want to." It was the first time she had ever chosen to do something for someone. The first time she felt she had a purpose. As days turned into weeks, the villagers noticed. They saw her walking beside the human sometimes. They saw her carrying wood or cleaning near the hut. Whispers began to spread like smoke. "Look at her. She thinks she is worth something now." One man mocked. "She hides behind the human, but she is still dirt." A woman sneered, but behind their cruel words was something else: fear. They had always enjoyed mocking her because she was powerless. Now she had someone standing with her, and that changed everything. The girl felt the whispers, the cruel eyes watching her. At night, she whispered to the human, her voice trembling, "They will come for me. They will take me back." The human shook his head, his voice firm. "No," he said, "I will not let them." She stared at him, her eyes wide. No one had ever promised her protection before. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with something she did not understand: trust. Her body grew stronger, and with strength came small laughter. Sometimes, she laughed quietly when she spilled water on herself. Sometimes she smiled when the human told her small stories about his travels. Her face, once filled only with pain, now carried light. But the villagers hated that light. They whispered darker words: "She should not smile. She is cursed. If the human keeps her, he will suffer as well." One evening, as the human returned from the forest, he saw two villagers standing near his hut. They whispered quickly and left when they saw him. Inside, the girl sat near the fire, her arms hugging her knees, her face pale with fear. "They want me back," she whispered. "They will not allow me to live like this." The human placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. "They cannot take you," he said. "You are not theirs anymore." Her heart trembled at his words. Not theirs anymore, could that truly be? She closed her eyes and whispered, "Then, who am I?" The human answered quietly, "You are yourself." That is enough. Her breath caught, tears filling her eyes. For years she had been told she was nothing, dirt, worthless. But now, one human told her she was enough. The change inside her grew stronger. She began to speak more, to ask questions. She learned to cook small meals with him. She cleaned the hut, tended the fire, gathered water. Each act gave her pride. She was not dirt, not useless. She was living, and for the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. But outside, the villagers' anger grew. They gathered in small groups, their voices sharp. "She should not live among us. The human has broken tradition. We must make him throw her out." The girl did not hear these words, but she felt the weight of them. At night, her dreams grew darker. Filled with shadows of her people dragging her away, she would wake, trembling, clutching the blanket, and every time the human was there, saying the same words, "You are safe here." Her fear did not vanish, but it softened under his voice. She no longer whispered, "I just want to live now." She whispered something new. "I do not want to lose this life." And in her heart, she knew the truth. Her world had changed. The girl who had once been treated like dirt was no longer the same. She was not only surviving, she was beginning to live. But the whispers outside were growing louder. The villagers would not remain silent forever, and soon the choice would come between their hate and his promise. The day of silence ended when the villagers finally gathered. They came as a crowd, their voices sharp, their eyes full of hate. They marched toward the small hut at the edge of the village. Whispers had grown into anger, and anger had turned into action. The alien girl, sitting near the fire, heard the noise. Her hands froze. The wood she was holding dropped to the floor. Her chest tightened. Her breath quickened. "They are coming," she whispered, fear shaking her voice. The human stepped outside before she could move. He saw them, dozens of villagers, men and women, faces twisted with scorn. The leader of the group stepped forward, pointing a finger. "Give her to us," he demanded. "She does not belong here. She is cursed. She will bring ruin to us all." The human's jaw tightened, his voice calm but strong. "No," he said, "she stays." A wave of shock spread through the crowd. Some laughed bitterly. Others shouted, "You dare protect her? She is nothing." One man yelled, "She is dirt. She is worth less than the ground you walk on." A woman screamed, but the human did not move, his body a wall between them and the girl inside. The girl clutched the blanket, her heart racing. She heard every word, each insult, each cruel laugh. She wanted to hide, to disappear, but then she heard his voice again. Steady and unbroken, "She is not dirt," he said firmly. "She is alive. She is worth saving." The words struck the crowd like a stone. For a moment, silence spread. No one had ever spoken those words for her, not once. The girl's eyes filled with tears as she listened from inside the hut. Her lips trembled, whispering, He stood for me." The villagers grew angrier. "You are a fool, human." One shouted, "She will destroy you." Another warned, "Throw her out, or we will throw you both out." The leader threatened, but the human did not flinch. "If you want her," he said, his eyes narrowing, "you will have to go through me." The villagers hesitated, their laughter faltering. They had mocked the girl because she was powerless. But the human was not powerless. His eyes burned with defiance, his stance unshaken. For the first time, they saw resistance, and it unsettled them inside the hut. The girl stood slowly, her knees weak, her heart pounding, but she could not stay hidden anymore. She stepped out, her small frame shaking in the open air. The crowd gasped at her presence. Her eyes were filled with fear, but also with something new, courage. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silence. "You left me to die," she said. "You laughed while I starved. You called me dirt. You called me nothing." The villagers shifted uneasily, their eyes avoiding hers. Her voice trembled, but grew stronger. "But he..." She pointed to the human standing beside her. "He gave me food. He gave me warmth. He gave me life." Tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not stop. "You call me worthless, but he calls me alive." The human placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Her body shook, but she stood taller beside him. The villagers did not laugh now. They stared. Unsettled by the sight of her speaking, the leader growled, "You do not belong here." The girl's lips trembled, but she whispered back, "Then I belong with him." Silence fell heavy. The human's hand tightened slightly on her shoulder. A silent promise he would not let them take her. The villagers looked at one another, their courage shrinking. For years they had mocked her without fear, but now she was no longer alone. Now a human stood at her side, and together they did not look weak. They looked unbreakable. Finally, the villagers turned away, their whispers bitter and sharp. "She is cursed," one muttered. "He will regret this," another said. But none dared to fight him. One by one, they left, their voices fading into the distance. The crowd was gone, leaving only dust and silence behind. The girl's legs gave out, and she nearly fell, but the human caught her, holding her steady. Her tears fell freely now, soaking the blanket still wrapped around her. She whispered through sobs, "They would have let me die." "But you saved me." The human bent slightly, his voice low and firm. "You are not alone anymore." Her heart shook at his words for the first time in her life. She believed them. She clung to him, her small frame trembling against his strength. Her voice broke as she whispered, "They left me to die. But you gave me life." The human said nothing more, only held her close, and in that moment, the laughter of the villagers no longer mattered. The cruelty of the past no longer mattered. What mattered was the choice that had been made. A choice that changed everything. The girl was no longer dirt, no longer a joke, no longer nothing. She was alive, and she was his. Together, they stepped back inside the small hut. The fire still burned, the blanket still waited, and for the first time, she felt not only warmth in her body, but warmth in her soul.